God, in these human words which I speak, may there be a word from you, heard in our minds and in our hearts, that we might be made truly alive for your sake. Amen. So everybody's still here after that reading. Maybe it's peer pressure. That's the sort of gospel passage that has us all scanning for the nearest exit, isn't it? Thanks, but no thanks. This might be a bridge too far. Just when we think Jesus is all healings and dinner invitations and irritating the power holders just enough to make us feel a little exhilarated, here he comes with hate your parents, carry your cross, and give up everything you've got. As another priest I know is fond of saying, Jesus, Jesus. Truly, though, if this is for real, and if we are for real about ourselves, this might be enough to make us change our tune about that whole Lord, I want to be a Christian thing, right? Which is precisely Jesus's point here, isn't it? Right? Truth in advertising. Jesus is not a practitioner of the old bait and switch. See the cost clearly before you go all in, he advises. Do the math. Follow me, but don't romanticize what it means to live according to the way. It's not necessarily always going to be pretty or fun, and you can count on it being difficult and often unpopular. And spoiler alert, I don't see any way this morning to spin this into a feel-good story, so my apologies in advance. This one is tough. It's what we might call a hard saying, right? And maybe not the most effective recruitment technique either. I have to imagine that a lot of those in the crowd waiting for a word of enlightenment and encouragement and inspiration felt similarly, right? I presume that this large group might have been a pretty small group by the time he got done with this pronouncement. I can hear them saying, you know, he's got a lot of good things to say, but he might be a little unhinged. Or, you know, I was with him up to this point, but it looks like he's just as kooky as his cousin John. What does he expect from us anyway? We've got work to do and mouths to feed. We've got lives to live. This is the sort of thing that gets you labeled an extremist, right? Sidelined from political discourse. In Jesus' case, it's the sort of thing that gets you crucified. So we come expecting and hoping to be uplifted and welcomed into the fold, and instead this feels like Jesus is warning us away, right? Putting up barriers. It feels like a big flashing stop sign. In fact, there are 11 negative particles in the 7 sentences of this passage. 11. That is a whole lot of no, right? And that many no's can tempt us to turn back, right? Why should we want to follow this particular path when there are far easier ones to take? I think the thing, though, that can be easy to forget about no is that every yes requires one, right? One at minimum. We always have choices to make. I think of athletes who give up unhealthy habits in order to rise to the top of their sport, for instance, or moving to a new place and having to give up the one you know so well, where all of your friends are and where your routine is well worn. Even something as mundane as conflicting events. Both the concert and the ball game happen on Friday night, and I've got to say no to one in order to say yes to the other. There are always decisions to make, right? Always sacrifices, and always some priority by which we measure and decide. But hate your family, carry your cross, give up all your possessions. Sounds like some pretty intense sacrifice. This can't be what he really means, can it? So what is this about? In trying to answer that question this week, trying to figure out what Jesus is really getting at here, really trying to get us to see, I landed on a word that sometimes has the capacity to make me a little bit uncomfortable. Renunciation. Right? Now, I don't want you to hear what I'm not saying. I'm not talking about renouncing the world, not talking about a renunciation of our earthly embodied existence, as is sometimes implied with that word. And I really don't think Jesus is either. Jesus, who had dinner parties with all comers, who turned water into wine, right? Jesus of the dusty sandals and plenty of naps on boats. I don't think he's asking us to renounce the world itself and life in it as wicked. But renunciation is nevertheless part of following his way, right? It is part of a life of discipleship. And that's because renunciation is all about the no that allows a bigger yes. It is at bottom the discipline of decision-making, right? A requirement in working toward a specific goal, in this case, following the way of Jesus. Not simply admiring his teachings, not simply worshiping him as a savior, but following his way, right? Modeling our lives on his example, living as a disciple of his teachings, which means being disciplined to them. So back to the looming question, are we really to renounce our families, to hate them? Not exactly, I don't think, but I do think there is required a reordering of priorities. So in Jesus' context, to an even greater extent than ours, right, the family unit was the source of social standing, the source of security and stability, of wealth, or the means to survive. So the renunciation of family is a pretty radical ask, then and now. But I immediately think of Jesus on the cross to his mother and the beloved disciple, right? Here is your mother. Here is your son. Here, the renunciation of family, clan as our primary identity becomes a much bigger, more expansive yes. Right? No more small allegiances. You are my mother, and you are my brother, and you, and you, and you. Right? This is a huge shift. A huge shift. It's a paradigm shift, really, in which the circle actually widens when we expect it to narrow. Right? But it also means that all of those things that we considered and treated as ultimate, right, as utmost, can no longer occupy the top position. It's a reordering of priorities. If we want to use the word hate here as the gospel does, I think we're talking about hating what is small so we can learn to love what is bigger, wider, and deeper. I read a story this week of a Salvadoran man who, during their war, had refused to fight, but instead joined the Red Cross. And when he did, made a commitment to answer whenever the siren sounded. And so when his village was under bombardment and the siren went off, he described how hard it was to force his way out of the house with his wife and his children, tearfully begging him not to go, to stay there with them instead. He didn't hate his family, of course, but he had made a vow to something larger, right? To the greater good beyond his family. And so it required him to reorder his priorities. And so he went. And I imagine that was a pretty anguished decision. So if that example doesn't make this much easier for you, I admit it doesn't for me either. But we're brought back to Jesus' truth in advertising. This isn't an easy row to hoe, we hear him say. Weigh the costs before you build the tower, right? Weigh them honestly and thoroughly before you sign up for this. We are not promised ease. What we are promised is swimming upstream, is kicking the dust from our feet when we're rejected, is bearing our cross, is an upheaval of what we know and how things are. And what we are promised finally is abundant life, right? Is unconditional love, is an expanded family, a tower worth building, work worth doing, joy, mercy, grace, the very kingdom of God itself. A new, fuller, more expansive way of being. There's no way that I can see around the fact that this comes at the cost of other things we value, right? Other priorities. We can't have it both ways as much as we'd like to, as much as we'd try. We can't keep a cozy and closed understanding of family and have a radically expansive one too, right? Can't live into the kingdom of God and also remain comfortable in a culture with different priorities. Can't hold tight to things we claim as our own and also trust that all good things come of God, that we are merely stewards entrusted in the meantime. And can't expect to try to live this way without it becoming a cross to bear. Right? So in a way, this is descriptive, not prescriptive. It's what the outcome is when we decide to really follow the way. There's a parable in the Talmud about a large ship with many cabins that set sail across the ocean. A passenger on the lowest level of the ship decides to dig a hole in the floor of his cabin. We know what comes next, right? The ship begins to go down, and so all the other passengers then rush to this guy's cabin. "What are you doing? We'll all die." The guy looks up from the hole and says, "It's my cabin. I paid for it." And of course, the ship goes down, right? So reordering our priorities, right? Renouncing the claim that the things that we value have on us in order to follow the way of Jesus means giving up the fantasy of insularity, right? Of, it's mine, I paid for it. And instead seeing that we are all in the boat together. Jesus then is the one rushing into our private cabins asking, "What are you doing?" Because on God's ship, to extend the metaphor, private cabins are, of course, an illusion, right? No walls separate us. We are collectively responsible for each other. No dividing lines between my family clan and yours. You are all my brothers and sisters. That parcel of land you built your house on, at some point it was occupied by the native people of this continent, but even before that and beneath that and beyond that, it belongs to the creator of the universe. Your gift for finance or philosophy or elocution, all gifts on loan. So where did we even get the idea that we own these things in the first place? The mandate to give up all our possessions points us to the reality that all that is comes from and belongs to God. As hard as this passage is to hear, with the word hate right up there at the top and 11 negative particles, when we parse it out and break it down, it's still just as hard, if we're honest. I didn't see any way of making it easier, and that wasn't for lack of trying. Which is why Jesus instructs us to consider the cost, right? To follow him, but with eyes wide open to what that means. Because what it actually means, I think, is that following the way of Jesus relativizes every single other priority. That Jesus' claim on our lives supersedes every other claim on us or thing we claim. Period. Which is a radical reordering of how we live, of our priorities, of our very identities. To follow Jesus then is to hate what is too narrow, too exclusive, small, insular, right? All of those things that feel stable, secure, and familiar, right? To hate those things and instead learn to love the wild and holy, to love what is terrifyingly expansive, inclusive, boundless, right? All of those things that break us open and make us bigger. To let go of what we consider our own so that we can embrace a life that's shared. In a Washington Post article from this past Friday, Michael Gerson, who I never expected to quote in a sermon, wrote this: "The way of life set out by Jesus defies cynicism, apathy, despair, and all ideologies that dream of dominance. It promises that every day, if we choose, can be the first day of a new and noble manner of living. Its most difficult duties can feel much like purpose and joy. And even our halting, half-hearted attempts at faithfulness are counted by God as victories." Indeed. The road is narrow and difficult and undeniably against the grain. It is. The cost is high and it's real by the world's terms, and despite our temptation to put it in soft focus and make it more palatable, Jesus won't let us do that. "Consider the cost carefully," he says. "Join me, but do it with eyes open, and I will be there with you. I will travel the road ahead of you and alongside you. You'll never be alone in this. And together we will build a tower worth building," right? The very kingdom of God. And that, after all, is very good news. Amen.